A do-it-yourself septic tank for a private house, odorless and pump-free, made from a unique, lasting, warm, durable, lightweight, and affordable material using widely available components. A septic tank without costly, heavy concrete. Building and installing this septic tank body should cost less than buying, delivering, and installing a pre-made septic tank or one made from concrete rings. The method allows you to save a lot on logistics, completely eliminating the need for expensive freight transport and a crane truck required for unloading and installation. A crane won't be needed either. No special equipment that could harm the landscape is needed, and heavy machinery doesn't have to be brought onto the yard. The work is very simple and easy, like a pleasant workout, so you won't need the services of a construction crew whose members might actually turn out to be dishonest, drunken bunglers. I know many people will say that can't happen. It can, I'm telling you, because you're on Yasha Koshak's song channel. And here we're all about modern methods and technologies. Modern technologies shouldn't make life more complicated, but on the contrary, they should make it simpler. Hello everyone. To implement the method, I decided to make a simple template matrix. As its base, I'll use 1/2 of a homemade table tennis table that I made back when I used to work as a furniture maker. A few screw holes on the back shouldn't affect how it plays. Besides, we haven't played table tennis in a long time anyway. I've got a couple of chipboard sheets and even an oriented strandboard board in my stash, but they're too big and heavy to carry alone, so the table is just what I need. Use similar sheet material, ideally at least 1.5 by 1.5 meters in size. I locate the table's center and use a wooden block to draw a 75 centimeter radius circle. In width, half of a tennis table is just over twice 75 centimeters in width and a bit less in length, so I extend it using an old kitchen panel. The septic tank will be cylindrical. Cylinder walls are much more rigid against compression and expansion than those of parallel-piped shaped objects. Strength of materials. However, with a smaller surface area of the walls, a cylindrical object has a larger volume than objects in a parallel-piped shape. The most advantageous shape, of course, is a sphere, but the technology being developed on Yasha Koshak's channel hasn't yet reached the production of spherical objects. I divide the drawn circle into about 16 equal segments. First, I divided it into 4, then in half again to make 8 and once more in half, which makes 16. I cut a small number of wooden bars to 60 centimeters each, and using metal brackets and short screws, I attached them along the marked segments of the circle. Next, I used parts made from fiberboard from the back panels of the kitchen set, which I didn't throw away but kept for tasks like this after replacing our old homemade kitchen furniture with new homemade ones. I considered buying thin plywood for this, but ended up not spending extra. I decided to countersink the places where the screws would go in advance. This way their heads won't stick out, and as planned, it should be easier to remove the finished part from the template mold. Using a square, I check the verticality of the bar and screw the hardboard to the top. From the markings on the table, I draw a vertical line so I don't miss the bar with the screws. I didn't reinvent the wheel and made a universal segment for convenience. Using the needed number, I can create cylinders of various volumes. Like prefabricated concrete septic tanks, this will be a composite, not a simple ring. Initially, I thought I needed to add slanted support bars inside the circle for strength. But when I fully secured the fiberboard and everything was connected, the strength turned out to be sufficient for what I had planned. I added extra vertical bars at the fiberboard joints. The template matrix was ready in under an hour of light work, made entirely from junk. As the base for our composite material, I decided to use sheets of a very effective thermal insulation material, Penaplex Comfort, with a thickness of 3 cm. It is widely used for insulating roofs, walls, and balconies. Penaplex Comfort is smooth sheets made of extruded polystyrene foam. The material is strong enough for its intended purpose. It hardly absorbs moisture, does not rot, is an excellent insulator, and is completely environmentally safe. We continue. First, I make the smooth sheets rough using a hacksaw blade that I removed from the handle. By the way, there are also sheets that are already rough. They are called Penaplex Fina. But the nearest hardware store only had smooth ones, and instead of going to a distant store for rough ones, it's faster to make the smooth ones rough myself, especially since I bought them at a good discount. Why did I choose a septic tank? It's very convenient. I'll explain the material's thermal insulation properties later. To avoid messing up the wooden floor while working with mortar, as always, I spread out a polyethylene sheet. The sheets have an L edge, which I carefully coat with polyurethane adhesive foam. While it sets, I press it down with a weight. The main thing is to glue the sheets evenly. To find out the circumference of our future 1.5 meter ring, you need to multiply the diameter by pi. 1.5 meters times 3.14 equals 4 meters 71 centimeters. I place it over the cross and cut the alkali-resistant fiberglass mesh to 5 meters long and about 60 centimeters wide, matching the extruded polystyrene sheet. I cut off the hardened excess adhesive foam. Subtitle editor. Next, I mix the compound for gluing and creating a reinforced surface on board insulation materials. I've worked with mixtures from various brands, and they're all good from my non-professional perspective. Sometimes I use tile adhesive instead, but the manufacturer Penaplex recommends using mixtures specially designed for these purposes. They contain the necessary polymers that ensure a reliable fixation of the base reinforcing layer to the extruded polystyrene, and we will really need that. Next begins a process that regular viewers of the Pesniyashi Koshiaka channel have seen many times. A complete beginner can handle this work. I apply the adhesive mixture to the Penaplex in a mostly even layer, embedding the fiberglass mesh. To achieve a perfectly smooth surface, I go over it several times with a wide putty knife. At this point, the similarity with many of my other videos ends. To be continued. I've already told you how I had an epiphany last winter. It happened when I was making a toilet out of Penaplex for our outdoor Euro-style restroom. Back then, I managed to bend this rather fragile material into a very small radius using a fixed mesh. At that time, I also told the viewers of the Yasha Koshiak Songs channel that this should take us to a whole new 3D level of using this composite material. That's exactly how it should happen, and this septic tank is just the first sign. In the future, I hope we can add a plunge pool, a swimming pool, and other fun projects to improve our lives. Let me remind you that I first used it in a flat version in the walls of my project, house for $1,000. I try to use the most budget-friendly construction methods, but even those require some financial investment. That's why I turned on YouTube sponsorships. You can support the channel with a one-time donation using Super Thanks, Super Chat, or Super Stickers. Viewers from Russia can help the development of possible future people's technologies through the Boosty service. The link is below the video, thanks in advance. More to come. In this footage, I'm making my very first composite ring. There's nothing to teach here because I'm just learning myself. As you can see, for a person with completely average skills, far from being a professional builder, in other words me, everything basically works out on the first try. I see two simple ways to make it. You can immediately glue and plaster a strip with mesh in a convenient horizontal position, making it equal to the circumference of the template mold, and then sort of wrap it around the template. But I can't do that because I don't have enough covered workspace. The second option is to glue and plaster one sheet at a time in a vertical position. The adhesive mixture bonds well to KPPS, making this task easy. I tested the viability of these two manufacturing options in one go. First, I made a strip by gluing 2 KPPS sheets, then extended it by attaching and framing 2 more sheets in sequence. I want to remind you what a composite material is, or simply a composite. A composite is a material made from 2 or more components with significantly different physical and/or chemical properties. When combined, these components result in a new material with properties different from those of the individual components. The weather was not very cool and damp, and the reinforcing layer was quite thin, so it set and dried quickly enough, and I decided to risk removing the temporary fixing bars. Subtitle Semyon, the mixture gains its full strength within 28 days. When it first appears to set, it's very easy to work with, so I was able to fix minor flaws without any problems. The 5x5mm plaster mesh ran out, so I used 10x10mm fiberglass mesh for screeds instead. It was left over from making the semi-floor out of Pentaplex for the open balcony in the House for $1,000 project. Since the septic tank is an important thing, I decided to do double reinforcement. My first experience applying plaster mix to a cylindrical surface turned out well. With a long trowel, I was even able to make the surface quite smooth. While the layer dried, I made parts for the future septic tank's top and bottom. Belarusian spring weather is very unpredictable and unstable, and it suddenly stopped pleasing us with relatively warm days. It became rainy and cold. I didn't risk taking the ring out of the mold while it was damp, but with no time to wait, I changed my tactics. Using a renovator, also known as a multifunctional tool, I carefully sawed the fiberboard without damaging the foam board. For extra reliability, I temporarily secured the ring on the outside with metal brackets. I'm being extra cautious since it's my first time doing this work. It's possible that in the future, some steps will be eliminated as unnecessary. I just don't know how this little studied composite might behave. I'm making marks with a pencil so I can easily put the template matrix back in place for making the next ring. I already know how to fasten the fiberboard, so I don't have to saw it every time. I unscrew the self-tapping screws from the base, and voila, to be continued. The result even exceeds expectations. Quite an interesting picture. I used 4 Pentaplex sheets and a small piece to create a ring with a 1.5 meter inner diameter. I showed my friends a photo of this stage, and they couldn't figure out how I tore the extruded polystyrene like that. The doubts that the septic tank ring might not work out this way disappeared. Everything else is just a matter of technique, which you are witnessing being acquired right before your eyes. It's most convenient to apply glue to a concave surface by moving the trowel more horizontally rather than vertically. I realized this by the second linear meter. My project, House for $1,000, has an outdoor toilet and shower, both built with a similar Pentaplex method. Maybe now I would make them cylindrical, but right now, the comfort of our main house is at risk. Regular viewers of the Yasha Koshak Songs channel probably remember the video where I talked about and showed how I upgraded our old septic tank. Originally, it was made from 2 wells, each with 2 1.5 meter concrete rings. 3 6-meter drainage lines were made from the second well. For the first 10 years, everything was just perfect. It didn't require any maintenance or intervention at all. But probably over time, the nearby soil gradually became silted up, and there started to be a need to call an expensive sewage truck for pumping. Then I upgraded the system by adding a 3rd well made of polymer sand rings, each a meter in diameter, to be continued, to be continued. Because I placed it not far from the first 2, it seems it ended up in the silted area, and the upgrade only helped for a couple of years. Now I see 2 options. First, to repeat the design of the old septic tank, but this time using these lightweight composite rings in a new place on the other side of the house, then forget about it for 10 years. I'm working like a reverse Potter. The second way, which is the one I'm leaning toward, install a deep biological septic tank that purifies wastewater by 98% and requires no maintenance. Store-bought deep biological treatment septic tanks are expensive mainly because of the large plastic tank. This method, as I see it, should allow you to save a lot on it. In these septic tanks, all the work of treating sewage is done by bacteria that love warmth. That's why the thermal insulation properties of Penoplex should come in very handy. The new warm composite septic tank will work as efficiently in cold weather as in warm weather. The rest of the setup, including the brush loading, a simple system of polypropylene pipes, and a small compressor for aeration, should be inexpensive. For one ring with double reinforcement, I use no more than 2 bags of mix, 12 square meters of fiberglass mesh, and just over 4 sheets of Penoplex. Knowing the material consumption, you can easily calculate the cost for your area. Each ring holds at least 1 cubic meter. For a septic tank with 3 rings, you'll need about this amount of material. You can easily deliver it yourself in one trip to your country house or summer cottage by loading it into the trunk of any Moskvich, old or new. A major flood, which occurs about every 10 years, caused a significant rise in groundwater levels. A deep biological treatment septic tank, by its operating principle, must be almost completely filled at all times. So in those years, there's no risk of it being crushed or floating up. Into the basement of our main house, which is only about a meter deep. In April, you could only go for preserves wearing fishing boots. By May, the situation hadn't changed much. To start installing a new septic tank, you need to dig a hole at least 1.5 meters deep. And at this rate of groundwater level decrease, I'll be able to do it at best only at the beginning of summer. We've almost figured out how to make the septic tank body using Penoplex. And I believe I have no moral right to keep this information, which might be very important for someone, unpublished any longer, so I decided to publish it now. In the next sewage video, we'll install the septic tank and begin working on its internal components. The subsequent rings started appearing like hotcakes. Continuation: septic tank, plunge pool, water tank, composter, swimming pool, round, tall, warm garden bed. These are just the first possible uses of the method that come to mind. So give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel Songs of Yasha Kosyak, and also subscribe to the second channel where my friend Marik and I travel to distant countries on a minimal budget and cook in extreme places on Mizan and TikTok. All the links are under the video, click more and the bell, and then you'll definitely get notified. Let there be peace worldwide. Thank you.